pursue more, to have more. So we're each tied together with this story of immigration. And we're really not that different. We love our families. We want to protect our children. We want to be safe. And it's that connection that really compels me in the work that I do. We're all so beautifully unique, but we're also so beautifully the same. To see people who seem so entirely different from me on a day-to-day basis, but to look at them and recognize that somewhere in my past I have a similar story, and that really we're just one big family, that these are my brothers and sisters, because we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. And so while we have a lot of other words that we can use to describe who we are and what we believe in, and that the word immigrant can unite us, I think the most important unifying descriptor that we have is that we're all brothers and sisters. We're part of the same human family. And it's through that lens that makes my work with family. It's really important to me to keep that frame of mind in a field where there are a lot of difficult situations and a lot of negativity surrounding some of the issues in immigration. So I love sitting down and listening to stories of immigration, and while they unite us, they're so unique and so personal, rich stories of family lineage, stories of hope, stories of despair, stories of parents desperate to make a better life for their children. We all know what that feels like if we have children. Hi. So I work really hard with that in mind, and I do it also because if I ever have to pick up roots for whatever reason, who knows what the future may hold, and I have to move to another country, I would hope to be received as a sister by somebody. Okay, so now that we have a shared immigration story in our minds, you want to turn to your neighbor and tell them about your roots a little bit, where your family is from. Where are you from? Hi. Hey. Hi. So I'm curious. I'm curious to know what other countries we have represented here. So my family, my great-grandparents came from Norway and Denmark. And so what other countries do we have represented here? Can't hear me? How about now? Is that better? Oh, okay, good. I can't tell up here. Thank you for telling me. So we've got Germany, Scotland, Ireland, yeah. Switzerland, yeah. Any other Norwegians? Swedish, yeah, all right. It's always fascinating for me to hear the story of people's heritage and to think about the lineage that crosses the globe so far, that brings us all together in one place. I love that. Again, it's one of the things that compels me in the work that I do. And the other thing that has compelled me into this work has to do with this place right here, and this guy behind me, Jesus. And it's been fun for me to kind of think about my work in terms of my spiritual life, and to realize that probably the greatest story of migration that we know comes right out of our Christian Bible. And it's the story of Exodus, the story of the movement of God's people away from slavery and injustice to freedom and a new life. I mean, many of us remember that story began with the Hebrews being oppressed by their taskmasters. Their persecution was increased by the orders of the king of Egypt to have all unborn Hebrew boys killed. However, we know the story about the one that was protected and hidden until he was 3 months old, at which time he was placed in a basket and in a river. And of course, he was rescued by Pharaoh's daughter, who thankfully chose to ignore her father's orders to kill all male infants. And we know the rest of that great migration story. Moses led the Hebrews. Like many migrants today, they left without time to really pack their personal belongings, to make plans, to have much choice in the matter, and they left and traveled for 40 years to unknown lands. And while today's travel time is typically much shorter for a family on the move, it's a familiar story. Humans have always been moving since the beginning of time. It's an age-old tale, and we read it in the Bible, but we see it in the news on a daily basis, from unaccompanied minor children crossing our border for safety to Syrians fleeing violence and persecution. And so with our Christian perspective, kind of thinking of that great migration of, straight out of the story of Exodus, it extends our story of immigration even further, where I can say, I'm Donna. I'm from Fayetteville. I'm also a descendant from Norway and from Denmark, and I am also a descendant of Abraham. And tracing that story back connects us even further in a way that is very moving for me. And it means we're basically all related. All right. But in all seriousness, I like to really draw attention to how difficult a decision it is for people to pick up and move and relocate to a new country. Whatever is pushing that decision to leave one's home can't be easy. To know that you may not be able to see your loved ones again, or visit the graves of those that passed before you, or to see the things that are so familiar to you. Those decisions, they're born of great hope. Above all, no matter what's happening, there's that hope that there's something better where you go. And so that's what really thrills me in the work here, and working with particularly our newest immigrant people, is recognizing that their story of hope is just starting, that they are seeking something so fervently that we are beneficiaries of, that happened generations ago, but that they're planting for future generations for themselves. It keeps me very connected. And even more importantly, really in this line of work is that God repeatedly instructs us through Scripture to care for the widow, the orphan, and the stranger as the immigrant. Leviticus 19:33 through 34 tells us, "When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." And so the strangers, the sojourners, the immigrants that are coming to this region to find a better life, there's a moral imperative in our spirituality to care for them and care about them. And it's with that human connection in my heart and by the grace of God that I'm privileged to work to welcome our immigrant neighbors. So I work, in my introduction you heard, I work for an organization called the Cisneros Center for New Americans. And we work in the field of immigrant integration. And so our ultimate goals are to work with people to increase their economic mobility, to increase their sense of belonging so that they feel at home in their new chosen home, and to increase the welcomeability of the Native community towards these newcomers. And a lot of this is not easy work, but it's becoming increasingly important for communities to focus on this. Our nation is changing, and how well we integrate the newest members will impact us long into the future. So in my job, I've kind of broken it up into 4 different things, kind of categories of what we do. And this is the fun part for me, to share the work. And I work with so many incredible people. Our organization is small, but there's so much collaboration in the community. And my hope is that it is inspirational to take home to your communities and find ways to participate in the work of welcoming the strangers in your communities. So the first thing that I like to do is to set the stage. So when I come and speak to groups of people, I like to share what community actually looks like that we are living in. And I figure many of you are from this region. I know we've got a few people that have traveled a long distance, but anyone that's in the Northwest Arkansas area knows that we have seen a huge demographic transition in the last few decades. In fact, in 1990, this region was almost entirely white. And that wasn't that long ago. And now we have communities that are where 1 in 3 are Hispanic. As of last week, the Springdale school system, just north of here, was 36% white, 46% Hispanic, 12% Pacific Islanders, mostly Marshallese. So 2 in 3 children being educated in these schools are first or second generation immigrants. I mean, that's astounding. That's a huge change for us. And these are the future leaders of our community. So we owe it to these children to do everything we can. We owe it to ourselves as they move to step into positions of leadership, to know that they're welcomed and that we celebrate them and their heritage, but that we expect them to do great things in this country. So the 2 largest groups are Hispanic and Marshallese, so that ends up, where most of our focus goes, just because we are a small organization. The Hispanic population is largely here from Mexico, although many Latin American countries are represented. And through lots of conversations, we've discovered Northwest Arkansas really is a key destination for a few reasons. One is that one of the top that we hear is that it's safe. People are looking for a safe place for their families, and it's beautiful. And then there's plenty of jobs, despite your educational attainment level or your language skills. So in the poultry processing industry, there's work. The Marshallese are also here as economic migrants, but their story is so incredibly unique to most other immigrant groups. Many of you may be familiar with the nuclear testing legacy that we have in that country, but if not, for 12 years after World War II, the United States tested nuclear weapons in the Marshall Islands. The megatonnage that we tested there was equivalent to 1.6 Hiroshima bombs per day for 12 years in that country. And we didn't set a bomb off every day. We condensed them down into 67 very large tests. I've seen video footage of the name of God being invoked to convince them that that was what they needed to do, that God wanted them to allow testing for the betterment of mankind. And this is a highly Christian nation, and so they agreed. Of course, the results were devastating, long-term health consequences and poisoning. So we still see a high incidence of thyroid cancer, which is particularly devastating because they're a very singing culture. So a lot of the women's singing voices are impacted over time as a result of that. Of course, a lot of birth defects and things associated too, but also the environmental impacts have been extreme. Several of the atolls, the small little areas of land that they live on, are uninhabitable still to this day, even though they were assured they could return to their homeland. So it's a devastating piece of our history, but one that makes the population here an interesting and unique one, because as a result of that history, we entered into a Compact of Free Association with them in 1986, which allows them to live and work and pay taxes here indefinitely as non-immigrants, so they don't have to get citizenship, and can stay. So it's a very unique status. Not many people are able to attain that status, just a few that were affected by that period of time in the South Pacific. And so now we estimate that there's about 10,000 Marshallese in Northwest Arkansas. One man came back in the 80s, found work, called home, and his family came, and now, just a few decades later, there are 10,000 living here. And the poultry industry is a big draw, again, for this group, and the third shift at the big plants are almost entirely Marshallese. So the chicken that we get on our plates, we have the Marshallese and the Hispanic to thank for the very difficult work that goes along with that being produced for us. And another interesting fact about this population is that we will continue to be a key destination for this group into the future. In a previous life, I studied climate change, and their country on average is about 1 meter high everywhere, so very, very low lying, and so storms, sea level rise, those things are very threatening to that population, and so I think we can continue to expect to see in the coming decades a stream of Marshallese as their environment becomes more and more degraded over time. So that's really the stage in a nutshell, to set the stage for you. And the next thing that we do is what I like to call setting the tone. So we work pretty tirelessly. Are you all able to see that slide well? No? Do you think it'll help if we shut the lights off, Cody? It's pretty bright just outside, yeah. Is that better? Okay. So one of the things we like to do, and we're not naive, we know that with any influx of newcomers there are difficulties to be faced, but one of the things we like to do is focus on the positive impacts of having newcomers in our region and the beneficial impacts of these immigrants on our communities. And the fact is, we really need immigrants. If you look at our workforce, it's as baby boomers are retiring out of the workforce, our native-born population is not sufficient enough to fill that gap. And so, filling that labor demand, we're going to rely on immigrants if we're to maintain the level of the working economy as it is today. And a statistic, I didn't throw too many of them in there, but in 2010, immigrants added $3.4 billion to the economy of Arkansas, which is significant, and they'll continue to be significant. And so, aside from throwing out stats like that, one of the things we do is we like to highlight immigrants in the region. We do it on social media, primarily, where we run pieces with quotes about what life is like as an immigrant. And we do this because we know it's not easy to encounter, different people. We've got our lives, we've got our groups that we see on a day-to-day basis, and particularly if there's a language barrier, it's difficult. So this is one young lady that we profiled, and her name is Josiana, and she lives in Springdale. And her parents moved here when they got pregnant with her because they had lost their firstborn in the Marshall Islands because the healthcare system is so poor. And in her interview, we asked, what is it like for you? And she said, I can't really speak Marshallese. I can understand it, but when I've gone to the Marshall Islands, I communicate with my elders through my parents. It's hard sometimes to balance the two cultures. Sometimes it seems like everyone wants you to do American things, English things, and then they also want the opposite. This is Ha. He says, In my country, it was so disrespectful as if a student talked to a teacher or an elder without their permission. But here, people are so independent that they can say anything that they want because they have the right to. There's no right or wrong about these cultures. It is just something new to me, and I have to figure out which is more comfortable to me. English is still one of the biggest struggles that I'm dealing with. I get really nervous when I can't explain what I want to say to other people, but I've gotten used to it. I spend a lot of time to get confident speaking English. I know it is hard, but it can be solved because I am trying to learn. This is Ayub. When we came to the United States, we didn't find things the way we were expecting, but that's totally okay because people in Kenya misled us. They said America was made of gold, that there is gold and money everywhere. There are no poor or homeless people in America. Everybody is rich and nobody goes to work. When we came here, things weren't quite the way people said, but we were so thankful, lucky, and honored to be here because to us, it did not matter whether America was made of gold or cotton. All we cared about was just to be in a safe place, and America is one. I thank God that I'm still alive today, and I think maybe God kept me alive because He knew that I would survive all the dangerous things that I saw and would find peace for myself. But that I still wouldn't forget those hard times and the suffering of the people then and all those who are still struggling with the same situations today. This is Samuel. He lives in Springdale. And he told us, I grew up in a garage or living in a room with 5 other people, but I don't carry it with me. I say to other kids, you know you don't have to join a gang or anything like that. I'm making the best of the situation I'm given. I'd love to work with the community, being able to speak and give people hope. That's what it's about. So for us, you can see this is something that we enjoy tremendously sharing with people because these stories are moving and really bring to life all the different perspectives that particularly these young people bring. Another thing that we like to do is throw celebrations. Everybody loves a party. And so this is one of our ways of sending a message, a larger message, that we're a welcoming region and that we're working toward that goal all the time. And so we threw, a few weeks ago, we had a welcoming NWA event where we invited a bunch of cultural performers and had some different kinds of food, and it was really wonderful. And so this is a group of Hmong students. And that's a group that is in the region that a lot of people don't know about. They are an ethnic group that were refugees out of China, Laos, and Vietnam. And they are a significant part of who we see at our farmers markets now. They have an incredible touch with growing beautiful food. And so we had the Hmong dancers there, which a lot of people hadn't seen before. We had a group of young Marshallese women dance, really beautiful, kind of soothing island. And then we had the more upbeat salsa band. Really, it was a wonderful, fun day. And we had a group of young Chinese girls perform a traditional Chinese dance. And it was so interesting. At one point, I saw them like looking at themselves in their phones, and they're in their traditional clothes. And it's just this interesting blend of old and new, and a really beautiful sight to see. One of the other things that we've started is a photo campaign with people holding signs, either immigrant or not, either saying, I am America, or I am a welcomer. And so we got hundreds of photos that I think are really powerful for people to see because we are such a diverse nation. So one of the other things that we do, kind of carrying on with this, setting the theme that I started. So we set the stage, share information, and set the tone by really trying to highlight the benefits of immigrants. But we also like to set the table. And this really just means getting people gathered around the table. Not always, we couldn't get everybody around one table if we tried, but the analogy is to make sure that everyone has a voice in what's happening in this community, and making sure that when we bring immigrants to the table, that we're also inviting corporate leaders, and we're inviting native-born, and we're inviting nonprofit leaders and mayors and the police and the fire department, everyone. Doing this helps us have a common conversation so we can deal with some of the struggles, but we can celebrate together the highlights of life together, and to have a plan going forward, a concerted plan for continuing to be a welcoming community. So this involves really fascinating things. Tyson invited all of the Marshallese clergy to a round table. Very 99.9% Christian adherence in the Marshallese community. There are 36 Marshallese churches in Springdale alone. It's fascinating, and they spend all day Sunday and all night Sunday at church. And so they invited the clergy, of course the most respected elders in their community, to come and help understand the Marshallese workers and to address some of the needs that they have and to get suggestions. It really was a tremendous opportunity for both sides. For Tyson to show that they are not just a big corporate giant, they genuinely care and want to help their workers. And for the Marshallese to have a voice, with the people that they're working for, that their sons and children are working for. It really was a powerful day, and we learned a lot, learned so much. Oh my goodness. So this might have been my favorite day of work so far. I was invited to JO Middle School, and that is all of the Marshallese students. So this school is predominantly Hispanic and Marshallese. And I was invited to speak to the Marshallese children about a couple of different things. One, to talk a little bit about climate change and what they've heard about that with respect to their home country, and kind of help brainstorm ideas, what they can do to be helpful in the future. And what I learned that's fascinating is not a single one of them has even been to the Marshall Islands, but they are so very connected to their home country, and they were so excited. I showed pictures from a trip I had taken there, and they were just amazed, that they were asking about sharks and all kinds of things, because there's a lot of ocean where the islands are. And it really was a wonderful day, really, to get the message out to those young children, too, that there are people in the community that care about you, and we're hopeful. We're putting a lot of hope in you as you come up in this community. There's also a really fantastic program at in the Springdale Public Schools. Again, it's a family literacy program where they invite mothers to come and spend time in their children's classroom with them every day. So they spend time in the classroom, half an hour or so, and then they all go off together and they learn English together, these mothers do. It's a way to keep them connected to the school, a way to help them learn English in a safe environment, and to let their kids know that their moms are keeping a really close eye on them, too, to have good behavior. And the last thing that we like to do is work in setting the trajectory in this community, setting up young leaders so that we have some sustainable action behind some of this work that we do. So we've got a couple of things on our plates, but the thing that I think is the most exciting and interesting is our American Dream Leaders program. And we recruit young college-age students to train them to be culturally competent in the changing workforce, to be young leaders in the community, to engage immigrants in full civic participation, whether it's citizenship classes, language classes, those things that are essential to succeed in this country. And so Luis is one of our leaders from last year. He was a young man that was brought to this country undocumented by his parents. I don't know the circumstances behind that, but now he has DACA, which is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and it's a temporary legal status for these children who were brought here, in a situation that they had no control over, but that they want to go to school and they want to work. So DACA allows them to do that. It's a 2-year temporary work pass, basically. So immediately, Luis went to college when he was able to. And when we asked him about it, he said, "I remember the time they asked me for my Social Security number when I got a full scholarship for the University of Arkansas." A full scholarship. They told me I needed my Social Security number to continue the process, and I said I don't have any. They told me there are no opportunities for you. There are no scholarships for you. So he's currently paying high out-of-state tuition to attend the university. And he says, "I'm paying a high tuition, but at the end of the day, I'll pay it off. No matter if I have 2 jobs, I will continue my higher education. It's been kind of slow, but I know one day I will finish. I'm enjoying every single moment that I've been spending in school." He's a tremendous young man and worth every opportunity to become a leader in our community. And going back to us posting out on social media stories of these young people, a woman, a perfect stranger from Texas, read his story and called our organization to ask if she could help pay for his school. She saw the potential in this young man. It's just a beautiful connection that happened. We had no idea that something like that could happen. So sometimes it's just as simple as sharing a story to help give a leg up. This is Alexia. She's just a doll. She's one of our other young leaders, and she says, "Since I've been living here in Springdale for 14 years now, I feel like I've really seen this area. And of course, the towns nearby really grow. When I first got here, there were few Hispanics, few minorities in general. So as the years went on, there was just a growth of everything, more kids, more schools, hospitals, shopping centers. I spent a lot of years just in the back, not trying to do anything. Getting involved in the community led me to see what else I want to do in my future. I know we can always do better, get better at schools, at programs for adults. I want to do anything that helps somebody." So that's really the lion's share of the work that we do. It feels like we have a million other things going that we don't have time for, and I don't want to bore you with the details. I like to pick out some of the more exciting things that we do and to encourage each of you to think about ways that you can support a welcoming environment in your hometowns for newcomers. It can be something as simple as keeping an eye out for the next multicultural event in your community and attending it. And if you don't share a language, smiling, or maybe as a church ministry. I read about a church who they had some tax preparers in their congregation, and they set up to do taxes in their church in a safe environment so that those immigrants that had been victims of scams in prior tax preparation systems had a safe place to go. I mean, there's so many different things to do, and so it's my hope that that some of these stories will inspire some action. And with that, I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite passages. It's Matthew 25:35. "For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me." Thank you. That's all. Do you guys have any questions? Okay. Just over a year.